So hello everyone, I am Alan Wallner with Conscious Branding and I want to welcome you to Thrivecast. And Thrivecast is a series focused on you, your business, and your success. And with each episode, we focus on a topic to spark new thoughts, even generate ideas and push the boundaries of what we know is familiar. And by doing that, hopefully we can even frame up a new mindset to ignite your business forward and inspire action. Because that's what keeps it thriving. That's what keeps it going. So to get us started today, I have one question for our guests, and that is basically our title. Do you really know your customer? So why don't you go ahead and put that in the chat, and I'll come back to that in a second here. But when I'm out there networking and talking to prospects, I ask people this question. And many business owners are very general about who their target audience, their customer, or their client is. And they say anyone who owns a home, or everybody who likes dogs, or someone who rides motorcycles. Or I even get sometimes engineers. So get some pretty vague answers. And today, to get our businesses to be successful, this type of understanding of our target audience is too general. And to be successful, we need to go much deeper in our understanding of our audience. And we're going to get into what that means in a minute here. But first, I want to introduce you, our panelists today. We have Dave Priddy. He's the president and founder of DK Sales Consulting. And Dave has been leading, coaching, and training sales organizations for more than 20 years. And he has a passion to maximize people's talents and their potential. And Dave teaches his clients to understand why customers make decisions in less than 90 seconds. So welcome, Dave. Good to have you here today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And then we have Scott Plum. He's a professor of Minnesota Sales Institute. Scott is also known as Professor Plum, and he hosts the podcast, What Salespeople Need to Know About Selling, and he co-hosts the weekly podcast called Get in the Door Podcast. Scott also has a second book coming out this year, and it's titled Doing It for Real. Is your commitment greater than your consequences? So Scott, that sounds like an interesting book. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you. Great to be with you and your gang.
Yeah. And then we have Ben Theis. He's the president of Skol Marketing. And Ben works with small businesses and nonprofits to get found online. So not an easy task. So we always appreciate Ben. Ben has worked for Google and leverages his expertise to help companies be seen through search engine optimization, social media, and search engine marketing. Ben brings a methodology focused on target audience behaviors and also an understanding of how to motivate people to take action. So Ben, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
So I had asked everyone earlier, do you really know your customer? So I was kind of curious what people's answers were in the chat, and it looks like we've got kind of a range here, answers like, I think I do, or recently decided to evaluate that a bit. And then we have someone have almost looks like they used the title to kind of describe who their target audience is, personal growth and behavior change practitioner. So that helps to kind of get that narrowed down a little bit. But really knowing your customer will make you attract more customers, especially in a business climate like, that's similar to this, actually in any business climate. And this is why we're talking about how you can connect with your customers and your biggest fans at a deeper level. It's critical to your business. It's actually a foundational component. So how to create these relationships that last a lifetime, move people to action, and allow you to lead your business with growth. That's all key, and it's all tied together. So we're going to kind of get things started off kind of at a fun level here. At a basic level, in terms of our customers, aren't we really talking about relationships? And, basically the basics of relationships. If so, having a solid understanding of what makes a successful and healthy relationship is essential. So how would you guys describe what makes a healthy relationship with our, I guess I'm using client, customer, and prospects here in this one here. So with that, I think I'm going to go with Ben. I'm going to have you start it out.
Yeah. And so I love how we start this out and we start talking about like relationships, because if someone's a current client, if someone's a prospective client, if someone's a referral partner, a speaking partner, like partner like this, they're all relationships. And so I love that we kind of started out with that. And so my biggest word that I think that I would start it, like that we try to start every relationship with and everything is going to be trust. Building trust with that relationship, if that's obviously here specifically a potential client or a current client, so that they know that you have their best interest at heart. Again, I feel like every salesperson always says, again, like, well, I put myself in your shoes and things like that. But again, my thing is, especially in today's world where we've seen a lot of fake, again, I think people are very smart, both consumers and clients and business partners and things like that, to see through non-authenticness or authenticity. And so I think that the thing is being trust, building trust with them, but being authentic with it. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to do though, again, we're not expecting that, but I think it really kind of starts with trust and knowing that, yes, I feel like COVID has even brought that up even more to the forefront, that it's even, we need to, rely on these relationships even more, and clients need to know that they can trust us to be there to help to, like internally with us is, if that's payment programs, if that's deferring payments, if that's discounts. I just mean like some of those things where they know that they can come to us. And I think at the essence of what a business relationship is, no matter who it's with, it's got to start with trust.
Yeah, I agree. And a good way to build trust is through that authenticity. And it's so important because people can tell if you're not being authentic, if it's your body language. I know it's a little different through communications such as Zoom and things like that, but people can pick up on it if you're a little uneasy. I don't know if it's inflections in your voice or maybe there's some body language that still comes through, but being authentic is key. I agree with you on that. Scott, how about you? I'd like you to kind of add on to this.
Yeah, I agree with Ben, and I'll add on to that we want to create a safe environment with our prospects to exchange information and opinions. And in order to do that, we need to ask questions that are relevant to what a prospect's goals are, what they want to accomplish. And when we ask questions and we learn about their values and their beliefs, it makes it easier for us to have a relevant conversation about what's most important to the prospect. And one thing that salespeople really struggle with when they're working with a prospect is a high need for approval, a high need to be liked. And they just have been taught that, people like to do business with people that are like them, that they like. And I don't disagree with that. I think in addition to that, people like to do business with people that they want to be like, similar to. So if a person has greater confidence, they like that person because they want to have greater confidence. But I think a lot of salespeople really struggle with being liked as a destination and not working to earn their respect. And when you earn their respect, sometimes you need to ask questions to get prospects upset. And people buy emotionally, they justify it intellectually. So if we ask questions that are relevant, what's most important to a prospect, what the goals are that they want to achieve, when we're asking questions and a prospect's kind of pushing back or getting upset, we're on the right path, because people need to get emotionally involved in order to make a change. And that change then is going to be supporting what the goals are that they have. So a relationship is important, creating a safe environment. And the main ingredient, and I always tell salespeople, the main ingredient of building trust, rapport, is to just listen. They don't need to start doing anything. They just need to stop talking. And when you stop talking and start listening, you'll be amazed at what a prospect will tell you, and they'll tell you what's most important to them if you're asking the most relevant questions and you have a goal and a process of identifying what information you want to learn from that prospect. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that, because not only are you listening to them and making them feel good about themselves, that you're actually listening to them, you're building the trust to what Ben was talking about earlier, but you're also creating self-worth for that individual. And everybody can always use a little more self-worth feeling.
And I'd like to add on to that we need to pay attention to words, because words have different meanings and different definitions to people. And right now there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace, and people are using words that are general and they're wishy-washy, and they're not really giving us a confirmation of which direction to go. So if we just go by that, what do you mean? Can you give me an example? And now you're going to be able to get the context of what the definition of that word is based on their world too. Yeah. Thanks.
Because something can be pretty general.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, things have really slowed down. Well, when you say they slowed down, what does that mean? Well, we're not getting as many calls, we're not doing as much work, or et cetera. So I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. All right, Dave, I'd like to hear your perspective around all this.
Well, I mean, trust was the first thing that jumped out, as both Ben and Scott talked about, and a lot of the things that Scott talked about. My second thing that I really focused on was mutual respect. So yeah, having that respect and making sure that understanding goes both ways. So I think you covered off on a lot of the things. And when listening, and I know Scott, you know I've talked about this before, but it's not just listening; it's active listening. It's not listening to respond; it's listening to understand. Because that's the thing that I've led sales teams for a long time, and there's an awful lot of people that they're listening only so that they can pounce on with the next piece of information. So it's really important there. But the last thing is that ability to communicate, to have that, and I think that's especially important when you disagree, to be able to still have that communication. I mean, that's one of the issues that we face in the world in general, but it's having that communication so that you can listen and, to Scott's point, you almost get to the point where it's a little uncomfortable for them and a little uncomfortable for you, but you can still have that mutual respect to see the different perspectives and finding, okay, what's the pain point? What is the problem that you can help solve? And it may not be you. It's also understanding that creating that relationship, sometimes in the long run, it may be like, hey, I'm not the right person to help you with, and then lead them to that right person.
Yeah, I like that. Now you're tapping into kind of the healthy boundaries a little bit. So, kind of like, what do you do when, we're always working to please people and to open doors to get business. But what if someone starts taking advantage of you and things like that? You need to kind of create some healthy boundaries also for yourself, so that I guess you're not being taken advantage of business-wise, or it just, the relationship doesn't get abusive to your business.
Well,
one thing I'd just like to add too is kind of like going off of what Scott said too, is like even the words, again, the words can kind of mean different, but I'd also even take that a step further, that even again, like, communication isn't just words too, it's the actions. If we say we're going to do something, the follow through of it, the way that, again, yes, our communication style may has changed, or the aspects of it, like with Zoom or phone calls or things like that. And so, yes, the words are important, but just like, even going off of what Dave was saying too, is bringing all that together and then putting it into action and understanding that the way that we're perceived is, yes, it's trust, and it goes off of those words. I think you start to understand or start to perceive trust with words, and then you actually deliver on it and actually build that with your actions.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, I think you wanted to say something about
well,
the healthy
great point, Ben. That was actually some of it, but the other piece to that is also identifying who you want to work with. It's sometimes in this with some of the changes and with some of the struggles right now, it's sometimes like, oh, I got to get a customer. Well, sometimes that may be the worst outcome, is you get the wrong customer, and then it's not that good fit. You're not going to be able to do as much to drive their business forward, and then they're not going to be very pleased with what you're doing. So it's finding that right fit, and sometimes getting them to the right person. I mean, Scott and I have talked about this, that I've referred people to Scott, and it's so that it's finding the right fit, and in the long run, that will do everyone's business, help everyone, and raise their game and raise the possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. That's a very good point to make there. Often in these relationships, we give people what we think they want. And in the case of our customers and clients, the same is true. So in a sense, we're making the relationship about us or about our brands. Shouldn't we be flipping this and putting ourselves in the other person's shoes and asking, kind of from their perspective, what can you do for me? And making it about the customer. And I'm just kind of wondering what your thoughts are on that, and why this perspective might be really critical to attracting new customers and clients and retaining the ones you have. And with that, I was going to start off with Scott.
Sure. Great. Thank you. I think one thing that we need to keep in mind when we're working with a new prospect, and some of the symptoms that they share with us, is to be able to identify what their goal is, listen to the symptoms, and not to be assumptive that they want to change. we need to find out what their motivation is to change. And when we start talking about what is the outcome of a better life, or what is the outcome or the results of improving a situation, what would that do for you, or what would that do for your business? Now we're really focusing on the motivation for somebody to move emotionally. And people are going to buy for their reasons, not ours. As much as we think that that's true, it's not the case. And sometimes when the prospect brings us the solution that they think they need, it could be creating a bigger problem because we didn't do a good enough job of qualifying the solution before they decided to buy it. We think it's a slam dunk, and we end up creating a bigger problem because there's certain things that we didn't know about before we prescribed a solution that creates a bigger problem. So we really need to be able to, again, focus on asking the right questions. One of the things that upsets and just, that just really turns off prospects is assumptive salespeople. That salespeople assuming that everybody has a problem, everybody has the same problem, everybody wants to change their problem, and everybody wants to buy from me. And salespeople come strutting into the office going, here I am to save the day. I've got a problem solver to all of your problems, when salespeople are being assumptive, and they should be more focused on being a problem finder than a problem solver. Find the problem, find out the motivation to change. What would that do for the prospect, the individual? And then continuously to focus on that mutual goal to work together to get there. But don't be assumptive. Don't assume that the prospect knows what they want. Ask questions and learn more about what their motivation is. Thank you.
I like that. And from the marketing perspective, we don't make ourselves a hero. The client is the hero. Your end customer should be the hero, and you're the guide to kind of help them get there.
Exactly. If I could just add one more thing, is when we're having a sense of, I need to educate my prospects. And that's every salesperson seems to have that mentality. And here's another thing to keep in mind is we want to educate to influence, not educate to teach. As a prospect, educate to influence, not educate to teach. When they become a customer and a client, then we work on the fulfillment of sharing our knowledge with them, giving them our expertise, not withholding anything, because we really want them to make a commitment to working with us. If we get into a situation where we're offering a lot of advice, we're not getting paid for it, that's called unpaid consulting. And then are we really earning the respect of the prospect to buy from us? Not really, because we continue to, we give our information away for free. I think we should be paid for our, information and our knowledge. That's how we earn a living.
Yeah. So it's really creating that healthy dialogue and getting at and asking the right questions.
Yeah.
All right. With that, I'm gonna tap into Dave and see how Dave wants to add to this.
Well, a lot of what he said, again, there's going to be a lot of commonality, but everybody's focus is, everybody's favorite radio station is WIFM. What's in it for me? And to a certain extent, I almost look at that as like, okay, we need to do that. What's in it for me? But from their perspective instead of our perspective. And it's identifying that pain point. There was a book that came out a number of years ago, The Challenger Sales Model. And, it's identifying what is the problem there, but it's not necessarily telling, okay, here's your problem, let me fix it. It's asking questions. It's saying, okay, here's what I see from my view. What do you see? And it's Scott, you hit the nail on the head, is that they need to see what they want to do. And sometimes that you may identify what you can perceive as a problem that you could really fix well, but that may not be the issue. It may be building on strengths. It's like, hey, you're doing really well here. Maybe focus on that, because if we can accelerate the strength, that may, take something that they're really good at, make them world-class, or make them, if they're world-class, make them absolutely, they're number one in the world. And it's finding out what, it comes back again. Scott said it really, really well.
Thank you.
That what motivates them, what is going to motivate them? Because sometimes it's sort of like, well, we don't think anything's broken, but we just want to improve on things. Okay, so let's find out what you feel can be improved, and how do we measure that? Because that's the other piece, is identifying what they want to get to. So like, okay, so I'm doing $1 million. I want to do 10 million. Okay, so is that you want to do that in a month, or you want to do that in 5 years? So it's making them realistic as well. So it's also understanding, okay, what are the goals? What are you willing to do, and how are you willing to do it? But it's got to be within them. It's helping them figure that out. And then again, back to, am I the right person that can help with that? So it's got to be for their, what I said, with them. What's in it for them.
Yeah, I like that. And, what they're willing to do, I think was a key piece to it as well. There is a degree of commitment on both sides of the relationship. And oftentimes the commitment seems more on the business side rather than the customer side, but there is a commitment to both sides.
Yep.
So Ben, I'd like to hear your perspective on that.
Honestly, David Scott did a fantastic job there. And even and some of the stuff that we even talked about in the previous question, like one of the things, that Scott talked about, and then I know Dave did was, like kind of listening, like really kind of talk about the right questions, but then doing the, like the next step is then actively listening for that. And I think this also then kind of goes off another point that we also collectively were kind of talking about is getting us in front of the right customers to make sure that it's right for them. Be respectful. And obviously, I feel like we sometimes always look at it like, is this a waste of our time? Is this a waste, again, prospecting? But also be respectful. Is it a waste of their time? If we're not the right fit, that's okay. Like not everybody's going to be the right fit for everyone. And so I think that that's just an important thing to kind of do. And then my last thing that I think that to kind of add to this, of all the good points that Dave and Scott brought up is kind of off of the assumption thing that, and kind of checking our ego at the door. And my biggest thing that I've always tried to tell people when it comes to sales and things like that is, especially I feel like sometimes in my industry, and I know other industries out there too, that there's like this assumption almost that the customer, with some companies, that the customer isn't smart enough to understand that they need us, again, like I'm this, and it's like, let's get that away. Let's, we may need to educate them so they can make an educated decision, but don't assume that they're, again, like not smart enough to know that, or to, again, to make those educated decisions. Really look at it that there are probably, again, other people they could go with, but why are they going to go with you? And just making sure we don't lose sight of that. Customers are smart. They can make smart decisions. And we need to make sure that we, begin to just remember that while checking our ego at the door and remembering how, throughout the process.
I really like that you brought that up, Ben, about, a customer isn't smart enough. Because if you really take a look at it, it's not that our customer isn't smart enough. It's just that we don't know how to frame up what we're selling and what we're doing to their vocabulary and their world and their situation. That's really the gap. It's us, not them.
When I see that approach from a salesperson or whatever, because like you said, they may not be able to articulate it. They may not be able to, it doesn't mean that they don't know what they want, or even, again, a part of your industry or your product or what it does.
Yeah, and I even hear internal culture saying, man, the customers just don't get it. So I think this is a perfect segue to our next question, which is we're going to go beyond establishing the relationship to kind of another level of really getting to know your customer, and that's understanding their personality. And that I have learned over the years is key to everything. It's almost like the secret code. And there's a great book that I had picked up a number of years ago called The Platinum Rule. And there's a lot of other assessment types of things that you can do out there. But the Platinum Rule is really nice because it helped identify different personality types so that you can better align yourself and your communication with others and still be authentic to who you are. It's not manipulating people, but it's kind of like what you're saying earlier. It's not that the customer isn't smart enough. It's that I don't know how to communicate to them the way they like to be communicated to. And so by understanding that, you can really open up a whole different world of communication with your clients and to better identify and define kind of what their needs are and how you can help them. And so I am wondering kind of what types of things do you guys use? What methodologies or tools do you use to help better identify and define your customers so that you can have that effective and impactful communication with them? And with that, I think I'm going to go with Dave first.
It was interesting. The Platinum Rule, his book came out in 1996. And first time I heard that phrase was in the late 80s when I was with Johnson & Johnson. And it was really trying to focus on what a lot of the stuff we've already talked about for the first couple of questions. And, Dale Carnegie talks how to win friends and influence people. And a lot of time that has a lot to do with listening and active listening. But the system that I use is called BANK, and it's an acronym. And it's very similar to other psychological profiles. All of them are based on Hippocrates' 4 temperaments from 2.5 millennia ago. At the beginning, Alan, you talked about that 90 seconds and really helping to understand what's important to the people that you're talking to much more quickly. And that's what I like about this system. And it really provides an opportunity to say, okay, what's important to you so that I can talk to you the way you want to be. I can really follow that platinum rule. And it's helped me a lot. It's finding ways to communicate to the best of my ability with the way that person communicates and what do they want to hear. It's not excluding anything. It's not saying, oh, I'm going to hide this, but it's focusing and delivering a message so that they want to hear it. I mean, when I go in, I mean, you notice at the back of my, after my name, I've got NAKB. So that's my code. And I share that with people to say, hey, here's who I am. Here's how you can communicate with me. Here's what's most important to me. Because I would much rather going in and talk to a salesperson and have them present the information that's most important to me so that I can make a decision. It may be yes, it may be no, but it's going to accelerate that, because that's the way I see the biggest challenge. And that's why I think all of the I've done every single psychological profile you can imagine. I've done DISC 2 or 3 times. I've done Myers-Briggs. I've done Discovery Insights. Anyone in corporate America has done these. Every time you get someone new in HR training, you get to try it again. They all bring value. I see that they all have helped me better understand people I've worked with, people who've worked for me, and my customers. So I see a lot of value in them. And again, that's the system that I use.
Yeah, and it's all about people, so we have to really kind of take a look at that. And I really like how it's really understanding how they want to be treated. You know, it's sort of the personality type. So, and it's more based on their values, so you can really connect at a deeper level with them. So it's not surface; it's more authentic, and I think you can have a better conversation with people. So, Ben, well, I'd like to hear you chime in on this and kind of give me your thoughts, because you bring a little bit of the marketing perspective here as well.
Yeah. So, again, so specifically, internally and externally, we've used DISC as well as 5 love languages, or 5 languages of love, to kind of understand a little bit, again, really, when I look at all of these, all the different ones that Dave brought up, like you said, we've all probably done a version of them, and they all kind of come down to, they're really trying to get at the same thing, which is, how do we deliver the message that we have or communicate it to that individual? Because it's really, at the end of the day, it's the delivery system is usually more or less what we're kind of talking about. And so, again, yes, looking at those, I think asking questions, obviously getting more and more experience with just being cognizant of, if you've never done, again, bank or DISC or 5 love languages or any of the Myers-Briggs, obviously, absolutely, you want to do those, because I think it's important, obviously, for those things, those little type of tales and the little things that you can pick up on. And a good salesperson, a good business owner, even just a good person, a lot of times will be, again, implementing the platinum rule, is picking up on these things. And I think the trickier part isn't really necessarily buying into them. It's obviously being able to get good enough, or at least to a level where you can see what that is. Because, like Dave makes it easy here when he says he's NAKB, but a lot of us and a lot of people won't necessarily do that. But if Dave and I are talking, most likely, again, if you know it, you're going to be able to pick up on those things. And I think one other thing to also kind of know too is, just with the times that we're in, is knowing that obviously sometimes people's just their different personalities, or these different DISC and love languages and stuff like that, a person's can kind of change with the circumstances, meaning that obviously we're in, again, different times with COVID. So understanding that, again, you may have been talking to somebody or a client a certain way, but you have to be cognizant of not only their particular kind of DISK or BANK, but also look at what's going around them and around the world, because that's also going to alter what they're going to be, how they're going to receive things. We've done a whole presentation on, the different psychology of marketing kind of within COVID. And it really kind of just brings back to this, that you could, again, been marketing at a D, but now that person may not be acting like a D because of external circumstances. So that's the one thing that I would, again, remind people to bring, is look at some of those external circumstances when you're, analyzing some of this.
Yeah, you bring up a very, very important point, because, prior to COVID, you may have been talking with somebody at a certain level and a certain understanding. And if you go to charge in now and continue that degree of conversation at that level, it's going to crash on you. You need to, take a few steps back and almost get to know people again a little bit, because everyone's emotional levels are all over the board right now. And you can't just assume people are all feeling the same way.
Yeah, look at yourself too. You know, yourself may have changed, so you have to like know that as well as you're delivering it.
Yeah, and I, in terms of the marketing side of things, and that's kind of what your brand is about too. It's you know, it's a perception that people have of you based on how you make them feel. So imagine going into a conversation assuming, when we even go back to what Scott said earlier, assuming all this stuff about an individual, and here you're just missing everything left and right. Imagine what impression that's going to leave on your brand. So I think you bring this up. It's just always being cognizant of what's going on around you and acting accordingly. So with that, Scott, I'd like you to chime in and enlighten us on what you have to add.
Well, I don't know. I got a couple of points. And one point is kind of addressed today with the bank system and asking people to fill out an online survey as to really what is their personality style. And I think some people may be guarded on really sharing that because it's almost a key of being manipulated. And if people feel like their guard is down and the decision-making process is disclosed and they feel vulnerable, they may feel manipulated by the salesperson taking advantage of them. And I'm curious how you deal with that, Dave, if that is a perception of the prospect.
I think that part of that is being genuine. I mean, because that has because I actually thought about that when I was first looking at bank, and I've had people ask me questions along those lines, and it's more creating that trust. That's why I share what I have to say up front, is to like, hey, here's who I am. I'm a nurturer action, and this is what's important to me. So it's creating that trust fairly quickly. And to be honest, a lot of it has to do with, it's almost a game. It's sort of like, hey, because most people think about how many times if someone has done a lot of disc, they come up and say, hey, I'm this. If they've done strengths finders, they talk about their first 5 strengths. So I guess that's the way I don't, you're right. All of them there is a danger of being manipulative, but you only get away with that once, because then your trust is gone. Yeah. Does that make sense, Scott?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's an important point to make. And it is a communication style, a personality style, a behavioral style, a preference. And we have our preferences. And I think we need to know what our preferences are. And we need to concentrate on our strengths and manage our weaknesses, because we can't control all scenarios. We may be a person that likes to read something, but if we're in an event and there's nothing to read, we have to rely auditorily. So we need to concentrate on listening more, even though it might not be a strength. We want to read it. Or maybe we're more kinesthetic, so we're kind of basing more of our actions on how we feel and the connection with another person. So I think we need to look at, are we visual, auditory, kinesthetic? Are we disc? Are we bank? Or, what is our preference? And to be able to concentrate on that, but also know that our weaknesses are. And then when we get into a situation where we may feel like we're going to be taking a few punches or getting beat up in a situation, I think we need to know what our goal is when we're representing our clients too. And I work with real estate agents on doing continuing education for real estate agents. I just got a new course approved on how to represent your client against a bully, because there's plenty of those out there that are just treating naive new realtors in a way that's not respectful, and in some cases can tempt somebody into doing something that's unethical or illegal or not in the best interest of their client. So the salesperson, the realtor, needs to say, when somebody says, you're such an idiot, I can't believe that you got a license. And the real estate agent needs to say, yeah, you're probably right. I'm kind of surprised that I passed the test too. But, I just want to represent my client. So the agent's taking a few bullets and taking a few punches, but they're representing their client. And what's the goal? Is to get what the client wants. And you take a few punches in the meantime. So knowing what we are preferred, and then being able to sustain the variations that we can't control, I think is really important when it comes to an assessment like that. Probably a little bit more broader than the question started off as.
No, that's all right. But I like that, because sometimes you do have to take one for the team. Yeah. It's not all about protecting your ego. Sometimes you need to kind of cue it up so you're protecting your client,
right,
or your prospect. So
exactly.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to kind of the bank, or the BANK assessment tool. it's kind of a question for kind of the sales component, because usually part of working into having a trusted dialogue with an individual is to make that, you know, really good, solid personal connection. So you're going to be out there doing research on their business or something with their personal life. So, hey, they like dogs. Okay, so do I. So I'm going to use that as my wedge to kind of make a connection, to have a good conversation where I can earn the right to ask a business question. So does bank kind of allow you to kind of have, you know, start forging that type of relationship so that you can earn the right to ask business questions?
And I mean, really, the whole system, it was designed around sales, and it's actually morphed into more about communication in general. But I mean, some of the things that I'm certified licensed trainer for them. We've now shifted. We've got a virtual coaching because of, but it's really, it talks about what are some of the triggers, what are some of the things that you get to the yes, that what's important to someone on, you know, if for a nurture action, it's important for relationships, it's important to, you know, what's the pop and the sizzle. Now my knowledge and blueprint are fairly high as well, but it's, if you've got someone who's real knowledge, you know, we referenced that Ben had referenced one of the other profiles is knowledge. They want a lot of information. They want to look at the clinical studies. So there's studies to be done. And so it's really identifying what information to provide. It's not holding back anything, but if for some, I don't necessarily want a lot of studies, but I want to know that they're there. So if I have a question, I can then ask that. So but what I think is even more important, it talks about the tripwires. It talks about, okay, you do this, and you've just stepped on an IED, and you're not going to be able to recreate that relationship for years to come. So sometimes it's even more important to say, okay, what, like if as a nurturer, if someone comes to me and talks about, oh, hey, May, he's like Scott talked about that realtor. If I know that someone has cheated someone or tried to shade the truth, that building that trust, I'm never going to call them. I mean, they're going to have to do so many things to draw themselves out of that. And that might not be as important to other people. That may not be the best example, but it's, you know, if you do things, if you're, you know, there's a blueprint in general wants you to be on time and you follow through on your thing. So it's, the other thing is the third code is usually your stress code. When I get under stress, when I get under a lot of pressure, boy, provide me with 10,000 pieces of information and I'm going to have a problem of paralysis through analysis. So it helps to phrase that. That's what I like about it. And the other thing I like about it is that it's so simple. I mean, literally, I hand people a set of cards and boom, within 90 seconds, they've said how they want me to communicate to them. And I always emphasize the other danger of any of these profiles is, oh boy, I know your code. I know you, and I don't have to think anymore. That's still the structure. That's still where you go. It gives you a major leap forward, but you cannot make assumptions. I know 3 or 4 other NAKBs were still very different in a lot of ways. So it's very important to not assume that you know everything about that person just because you've got their DISC profile or their MBTI or their bank code.
Yeah, these are all tools.
That help, Alan?
You're all tools. You can't really get complacent about it. So. And then Ben, you brought up the 5 love languages. I'm glad you brought that up. It's a little unorthodox for business. It's more, you know, about relationships, one-on-one with couples and significant others. But you know, I think that plays such a key role in business as well, because if you understand how people respond to different emotions and love, I guess basically. You can really understand how to build that stronger relationship with them in an ethical, you know, wholesome way. And just understanding the 5 love languages opens up a whole new world of communication, I believe.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, you know, I mean, especially, I just always say, you know, especially with small business owners or not even having to be small business owners, but, you know, again, a lot of times work, especially, I'm assuming a lot of people listening and doing that are more connected than potentially maybe the average. So I just mean like that personal love or in that business love really starts to kind of meld together. So there's a lot of similarities or, you know, things that can be transferred.
Yeah, you know, all relationships get better with a little love, right? So, all right. So, okay, now we've talked about building relationships and collecting all this information about people and who's our ideal customer and and then even profiling so that we can get even a little more focused. Having all this information about your customer, who your ideal customer is, I'm going to put on there, can be overwhelming and tough to keep organized. So how do you refine and organize all this information? Because you're probably going to even have subsections of your different target audience groups so that you can even hone in messaging when you're doing your marketing and sales to specific issues or problems they may be having. So how do you organize all this to be more effective when you're out there communicating? Do you have like a complex cheat sheets, or how do you do this, Ben?
Yeah, well, so what I would say with this one too is, again, all the advice I think you're going to probably get, or just the opinions from me, Scott, and Dave, I think it's one important thing to also remember that to find obviously what works best for you. That may seem simple, but I mean, like, I feel like I remember when I was first getting into business, you have all these people telling you, well, this is the way you have to do it. This is, again, you have to follow these systems, and some of them just didn't work for me. And I was, and so I think it's important to realize what the basis of what they're trying to tell you, and then make sure you can implement it on your own. And so I think, like, for instance, like us internally, it's, again, essentially kind of a CRM system, or using analytics to make sure that we can identify, and then we categorize, and then we can keep track of our different relationships with them and communication. But I think overall too, I think another thing that I would like to kind of bring up with this is, again, throughout having all your different demographics and everything, I think it's always important to prioritize those demographics. And we always talk about this with our clients is, you want to try and stay away from the coulds. And what I mean by that is, I'll work with a client and they have, again, these two main demographics they want to go after. And then they want to change the entire messaging that we try to bring to them, because they could go after this other demographic. They could go after this other person that is, again, yes, you could do business with them, but again, make sure you stay focused. And I think that that's what a lot of these tools can help you do, or these methodologies, which I feel like Scott will be able to kind of even talk a little bit more, and Dave, on those. But I think the one thing that I'd like to just kind of bring to it is that, yes, a CRM system, yes, analytics, some of these other kind of systems, but at the end of the day, it's making sure that we can keep the communication, again, straight there. So we're doing our follow-ups, we're doing that. But at the end of the day, making sure that we're staying focused with the demographics that we've prioritized, and not getting distracted so much with the coulds.
Right, because the more focused you are, the better results you're going to have. If you're trying to sell to everyone and jumping around, you're not going to be able to have the sales success that you'd like to have, or even marketing, drawing the right people to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So with that, I'd like to kind of hear what Scott has to say.
Sure, I totally agree with Ben, and he's right on the mark when it comes to the CRM and keeping track of the different demographics. And I think in addition to that, when we have a conversation with a prospect, we need to really understand what is their goal, what is our ideal desired outcome, what would it do, what would they get? I mean, people don't buy a drill, they really want a hole. And when we give them the desired outcome, or focus on the desired outcome, then everything that we should do should be in alignment with that goal. And a lot of times that is really in the first conversation that we have with a prospect. We really need to be prepared to seek information, to find out what's important, to uncover the decision-making process, and to be able to focus all of our conversations on those topics so that we can have a second phone call. Salespeople say to me all the time, they're not returning my phone call. They're not returning my message. I've left 3 messages. And I go, have you ever had a chance to talk with them? Yeah, I talked with them once. I go, well, what did you guys talk about? Well, and we don't know. We don't remember. We never prepared for that first phone call and that first attempt to be creating an approach that creates interest and curiosity in the first conversation, so that they're interested in talking with us. They want to return our phone call. They know we have something that they want, and concentrate on that. That way they're going to return our phone call. We're going to continue the conversation. So know what the desired outcome, know what they want, focus on that. Everything you should do should be in alignment with that. If it doesn't support the goal, it's a distraction, period. And when you're having idle conversation, it can be like walking in a minefield. So if you're going to say something or ask something, have a goal, focus on the goal, And I think you're going to be able to get to the desired outcome and have that engagement. And then going back to the trust and rapport and respect, you're focused on what's most important to them. Thanks.
Yeah, I like that with the goal. And the twist of the goal is the goal is primarily with your customer in mind, kind of what can you do for me? So it's the goals around that rather than your goal of I need to close this sale.
Yeah, I got people that call me, I won't answer the phone because, you know, that's 45 minutes I'll never get back. I mean, I like them. They're friends, but I ain't going to answer the phone. And
you're not talking about Dave, are you?
No, not at all. Not at all. You're calling me during the day in prime time here. I'm not going to talk to you because it's just going to be meaningless. It's going to be a fun conversation, but we're not going to get to a goal. We're not going to really change anything. So we'll do it another time. And if you can shrink it down to a 30-second message and be concise enough, I'll call you back. But if you can't do that, it really wasn't worth it to begin with. Sorry to be so harsh, but.
No, that's good. That's good. So I kind of lost track there a little bit because I was laughing and joking and teasing you guys. So we need Dave and Ben to answer that one as well too yet, right?
I think Ben started, but I mean, they both made some great points. And I mean, thanks. What I would say is, I mean, the CRM and having those goals and everything. But one of the other things that I always emphasize to every one of my people who are on my sales teams is taking notes, but not only taking notes, but literally as soon as you walk out of the call, make it, well, okay, if you were all going into your next call, if you were having your next appointment, you were having your next discussion, what is it that you would want to follow up on? What are the things that, what's the extended conversation you want to have? Because you're never going to be that aware. If you wait till the end of the day, you forget things. If you wait till the end of the week, oh my, and if you don't do it by the end of the month, you know, you're guessing exactly what happened there. So it's having that CRM or the model or whatever it is, but then having that information and also pulling from what both Ben and Scott says, developing that avatar, figuring out, okay, be very, very focused. Who is my ideal client? Maybe it's one or two, no more than three. It's got to be this laser focused, because if you're saying, oh, hey, anybody who's, you know, what is it? If a chiropractor says anybody who has a back, it's like, okay, well, then everybody has a back and no one's going to call you. So it's having that focus and, you know, bringing it back to, you know, one of the other things as far as segmentation, that's what I like about some of the psychological profiles is saying, okay, I know this is I put people down based in my phone. So I put down their codes so that I know if they call, boom, I can say, okay. And that reminds me of a lot of the notes that I've taken. Maybe I'm not going to be perfect, but when I'm going in, I've got that preparation so that I know there's a lot of nurturer actions. So nurturer actions, I can get 80 to 90% of the way I want to talk to them on all the times. Now there's going to be some nuances because that based on what other things that are important to them and things that I've got to know them on, but that allows me to at least have a jump start so that I'm more prepared, even if it's sort of a surprise call. I know, boom, I know how that I want to talk to them. And then I can, you know, back to those triggers and tripwires to avoid some of those tripwires so I'm not sabotaging the relationship.
Sure. All right. Well, now I'm going to kind of get into the ABQs, another burning question from our listeners out there here. And we've got one here that says, would someone's personality classification or assessment really change during a crisis? Would it be temporary, or is this maybe clarity on who they really were all along? So I think I know, Dave, you just finished answering that question, but I think I'm going to start with you because you use the bank system quite a bit and thought maybe you could kind of.
First of all, when I look at the blueprint, action, nurture, knowledge, everybody is made up of all four. Some people are really high in some are really high in all of them, but under stress, in a lot of times what I found is that you go to that third code because it tends to just be the stress code. But it's depending on the situation, you know, both Ben and Scott made that comment based on the situation. There's some people that emphasize more, they pull out more of one aspect with their families and their friends and in business. I mean, I'm very high in blueprint because I was in the Navy. I went to the Naval Academy. I spent 17 years with Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson is about a blueprint a company as you get. If you don't act like a blueprint, they've got two words for you. You're fired. So it's a matter of based on the situation you're in, you need to raise your game. I mean, to be honest, ideally, you're absolutely across the board equal in all four, and then just pulling on which one it is based on what the situation is. If I've got to get real technical, I've got to really raise my knowledge. I've got to get into the specifics. When I was presenting clinical studies and trials to physicians, I needed to pull up a lot more on my knowledge. If I was doing more relationships and things like that, it's a much more nurture. So it's everybody will react differently under different scenarios and different situations. So that's.
Yeah. But they always kind of tend to go back to their core at the end of the day.
Yeah, but this is really how you make decisions. The nurture action is how I make decisions. I can, and normally you present yourself in a similar manner, but it's still important to be ready to handle all four. But it's to a great extent, the value that I see is all the ones that I've taken, they've been between 80 and 90% similar. So that's what validates most of them for me.
Sure. So Ben, is there anything you'd like to add to that question, or?
Yeah, no, I think Dave, again, laid it out perfectly. The only thing I would just say is, like we're obviously always kind of changing. I do think that in most circumstances, stress is usually, again, a temporary type of thing. Now, again, you may know that there may be a pattern, like for instance, if I'm, again, stressed, and if I'm stressed, if that's an internal team working, how to potentially kind of react that, because temporarily I may switch to a different one. I think if we're specifically talking about COVID, that's potentially a different type of situation or a circumstance, because that might, obviously, depending on what happens to them, when you're talking, again, catastrophic life events that happen to people, that can definitely change people. We've all probably known people that have gone through things that have catastrophically changed them. They may have been this way, now they're this. So I'd say in normal situations with normal stress and things like that, and there's obviously going to be different intricacies for everybody, but I'd say it's more going to be a temporary. But we also, I feel like, again, Dave brought that up, is if you're going to your second or your third kind of letter in the example, in that, again, we're going there, but then we're coming back. We're going there and then kind of coming back. But it is, I think, important to realize that we may have to be a little bit more cognizant, and we may be dealing with some things that may be a little bit more permanent than we're used to, just because, again, we're going through a catastrophic type of stress event. We're all just doing it all together instead of individually, where sometimes that happens.
Sure. Scott, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Sure. I'm going to like to cover 3 points.
Sure.
One, when it comes to the DISC assessment, there's 2 types of results. There's the natural and they're adaptive. So when we're seeing a large variation with our DISC in certain areas, we're going to encounter a lot of stress, because we have to adapt so much between our natural ability to our work ability. The second thing that I like to add is, when it gets into stressful situations with other people, we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we want? What do we want for the other person? And then what do we want for the relationship? So we need to be able to answer those 3 questions. And then the last is, everything that we do is built on our motivation of self-interest. And there's really 3 types of self-interest. One is a selfishness that it feels good to do something for another person. It feels good to volunteer at the Dorothy Day Center or go down to Mary's place. So we feel good because we do something like that. Then there's the self-centeredness, where we do that because we want our own edification of it. That can be very selfish, self-centeredness. And then the third one is, we do things because we want to avoid feeling bad or feeling guilty. So when somebody comes and asks us for a favor, and it could be a very personal favor, we don't want to say no to them, because we don't want to take on the consequences of what happens if what I don't give them is going to end up as a negative result. So I do it so that I don't feel bad. So when you think of those 3 areas of stress, when you start analyzing it a little bit more, we start to address an emotion with a little bit more intellection, a little bit more of a philosophical approach. That would be my answer. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's good. So kind of wrapping everything up here today, it's what we found out is it's really important to really get to know our customers and our target audience, our client, however you want to label them, at a much more granular level, so that we can have the deeper conversations that we need to have. And by having this information, we're also able to differentiate ourselves from our competition. So the better you know your target audience, the better you can communicate and connect with them. And not only that, it also gives you kind of a cheat sheet for how to market to them, you know, what types of words to use, what types of phrases to use, how can you help them. But it also gives you insight around what new products or services you could even start adding to your business. So really knowing your customer is one of those foundational elements that's the key to your success with your business. So it's a lot of work, but there's a huge return on your investment for whatever you put into that. So, and don't just make a list of all, leverage it and use it. So with that being said, I'd like to thank our panelists for sharing their insights and their wisdom here today. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending this ThriveCast episode. And I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. I know we had some fun here, had some laughs, so it was good for me. And if you have any follow-up questions or questions that we were not able to address due to our time limitations, please send them to us at info@consciousbranding.com and we will respond to you. And we'll also be sending you a link to this episode along with some bonus materials. So, you know, basically to kind of help keep the momentum moving. And also if you have any friends, peers you'd like to forward this link, the link to and the bonus materials, feel free to do that. We're here to kind of help everyone through this, and that's really what this is all about. And so if you have any ideas for any future topics you'd like to see covered, please let us know. Again, info@consciousbranding.com. And I look forward to seeing you all back here. And remember, you create your world, so believe in your vision and drive it with purpose. And above all, take action. So until next time, be remarkable. See you later, everyone.